I hope that you found these videos helpful as you proceed through the review process. As we wrap things up, I wanted to provide you some final thoughts and some tips for the next steps here. So first, probably most importantly, don't get lost in the details. One of the challenges that several of our clients have had is they go through these documents and they attempt to understand and dissect every single sentence of every single legal document. I have been doing this work for more than a decade. I have had hundreds of estate plans. I litigated dozens and dozens of probate cases, and there are still things that I am learning doing this job every single day of the week. So, not being an estate attorney, what I'm going to just caution you against is don't get mired in the details. There are technical and legal provisions all throughout these documents. They're there for a reason. You have an estate attorney who's there to structure things in the way that you're asking them to structure, and that's our job. You can take that time and you can try to basically become an estate attorney by reviewing and learning and spending hours and hours and hours on the details. But what I found are two things. Number one, when that happens, clients tend to get very frustrated and very overwhelmed because they're effectively trying to learn an entire occupation just for purposes of doing this project. And so they lose sight of what's important here, which is the people that we're installing to do things for us and the actual plan and goals and how it's going to be carried out. So we lose sight of that when we get mired in the details. And the other thing that happens, in all honesty, is people end up taking so much longer to go through a process that shouldn't take that long. In a general sense of timing, I always tell people to set a benchmark of about 30 to 45 days to get through this process. When I've had clients that take a year or 2 years to go through this, it's because they get lost in these details. And unfortunately, they forget everything as soon as we put the plan in place to begin with. So it's a warning I just want to give you and kind of emphasize because I don't want you to find yourself miserable going through this process because you're trying to teach yourself something that somebody else should be doing for you. And on that note, you are hiring an estate attorney for a reason. We are here to help you. We're here to tell you your options. We're here to structure things in the way that you need them to be structured. Rely on us for that. I equate this a lot to circumstances when people might buy a house. How much time do you take reading through every line of every mortgage document and following up with the lender to get clarifications about what those sentences say and how they work and what are the technical rules and what are the laws? Well, you don't do that because you know what a mortgage is and you know how it works, and you're trusting your mortgage officer to do this for you. I want you to apply that same mentality here because I don't want you to become overwhelmed with something when you shouldn't. Second, you cannot control everything. That's a hard reality that some people have to accept. But for the rest of our lives and after we are gone, there are circumstances that will be out of our control. We're going to do our best in estate planning to create guidelines, to plan for events, to create contingencies for different things that might happen. But we cannot control every single outcome of every single situation for every single person. As you may have those guidelines, those thoughts, those wishes, those situations, I strongly encourage you write them down. As part of your planning, we maintain a file for you. Within that file, if you choose to write up a set of guidelines, whether it's handwritten or just typed out in a Word document, we add that to your file. We will hold that forever. You can update that on your end as you need into the future. But to the extent you want to try and provide for as much as you can, I want you to write it down. But I also don't want you to get lost or paralyzed in this process because you're not figuring out a solution to control every single minute detail of every single situation. When it comes to your estate planning, remember that you can change anything. As our lives change, as our circumstances change, we can update these documents. The plan itself, once we have it in place, is incredibly simple to update. So just keep that in mind. One of the challenges some clients have faced in the past is they feel like they have to have every conceivable thing detailed out in their documents before they sign. So they might end up waiting months or years to sign their documents because they can't seem to get past this hurdle of all of the details. Well, if we just signed the plan in the first place with as best that we could of those details, and then we updated those over time, that puts us in a safer position. Your documents are not effective until you sign. Anything you say, anything we write down, that's great, but legally it's meaningless. So we want to make sure we stay on a good track here, get everything signed, so that then we have a structure in place. And from that point, we can keep making adjustments year over year, decade over decade. The last question that I get a lot is, when do we start retitling assets? The funding process is something that we're going to begin when we actually have the estate plan in place. I understand people wanting to just get ahead of the game and be ready and moving forward. But the challenge that we have here is we can't actually retitle assets in a number of ways until we have the actual legal structures in place to do so. A trust doesn't actually exist until it is signed. So we cannot move a house into a non-existent trust, just as an example. Our office is going to facilitate that process. If you want to speed it up, make sure that you've provided us with all of the documentation that we need, and then you can work with our staff on being able to locate or pull any records that you're not able to find. We will get to the funding process, I promise you. For right now, I want you to focus your efforts on the documents and the review process, and then we'll move you to the next steps. We like to spread things out in estate planning because otherwise it can become very overwhelming if you're trying to do 10 steps in one. For purposes of where you go from here, you don't have any deadlines. Again, I recommend that you set one for yourself. You stay in touch with our office. We will keep reaching out just to try and push things forward for you. And then if you get to a point where you just cannot move forward, you've read your documents, you have watched these videos, and you just need answers for something that you haven't received yet, call us or email us. We're only a message away, and we'll do our best to provide you with that information, with those additional maybe options for you, so we can facilitate you getting to the end of this process. As you need, stay in touch, please. But regardless, good luck with the review process. Refer back to these videos as much as you need. You will have continuing access to them for as long as they exist. So even beyond the review process, if you are looking at your documents a year from now or 5 years from now, please feel free to access these videos, and they can help you again understand and maybe reinforce a lot of the ideas that we've talked about during this process. So again, good luck with everything, and we will plan to see you again soon.